I wanted to reflect a little about my participation in this, because it can seem as like something foreign, that it's a little weird to us. We've had some pagan services here, but never a Sumerian one. But I think all of us have something that we're doing that is weird. I mean, I'm weird. Probably weirder than you think, or maybe even than I think. I think all of us do a lot of covering up, fitting in, going with the flow. There are parts of ourselves that society wants us to be ashamed of. Now, and this is especially true for intersex and transgender people. Now, I never knew anyone that I knew was transgender as I was growing up, but since coming to the Bay Area, however, I've known a lot. I met my friend Heather here, whose life was tragically taken several years ago. I also, interestingly, met people who had transitioned after I knew them, like my friend Emma and my friend Marie, who I've co-owned a house with for 18 years. And Marie transitioned just over the past 2 years, having stayed closeted for most of her life. And that seems incredible. And something that I've been dealing with lately has been my name. I have 2 older sisters, and we all have both a Korean name and an English name. And in early childhood, preschool, and kindergarten, I went by my Korean name, Hanju, like my older sister, who uses her Korean name, Chiha. But when I went to first grade, I changed to my English name, John. It was simply easier to fit in that way. My family worried that I'd be teased or it wouldn't be understood. People would have trouble pronouncing it. And my father was Korean, and he kept his Korean name, but he did make a big point about adapting. He emphasized how we were to fit in. We succeed in school, go to an Ivy League, become a doctor with respects and memberships, wear a suit and fit in with other successful people. He wanted to succeed within the system and wanted the same for his children, well, especially his son, who carries on the family line. For my friend Marie, who's stayed closeted, I know she never even considered being transgender as a child. She describes how when she grew up as a boy in East Texas, she knew for certain that if she did anything girly, she wouldn't just be teased. She would literally be beaten up. It was simply and violently unacceptable to society to take that step. And thankfully, it is easier for the next generation. My niece Amy came out as transgender while she was at college, and still is. I've known for a few months, her parents for a little longer, but she just came out to her grandparents a few weeks ago. It was a big step, and sadly, my parents aren't fully accepting of it. For me, though, I have it easier because the only thing I have is my name. Or is it? Reflecting on this certainly made me think about what else I've done just to fit in, maybe even without thinking about it. Think about my clothes, how my style and look, because they're something that I don't think about a lot. Right? They're generally functional for work or activity, usually t-shirts and jeans, or plus a few dress-up clothes for church. The extent of my self-expression in the messages on my t-shirts, typically. Other clothes are often gifts or rare purchases. My haircut tends to be a simple and cheap trim. I can say I'm not trying to be conformist. I'm just being economical and simple and functional. That's what it means that I'm doing, but that means defaulting to the status quo, just how I used my English name because it was easier instead of my Korean name. And I've had a lot of excuses like that. Like when I was a teacher, it disrupted classroom management if I was too informal. And I don't even know what I would say if I was fully open with my self-expression. If I wasn't fitting in, what would my style say about myself? And the truth is, I still don't know. I've told my girlfriend Blythe I'd look more at gay Asian men for fashion because I like the colors and expression over muted dullness of what's typical for straight men in our society. And I want to express my Korean heritage. but I haven't taken that plunge yet, as you might have noticed. I don't know what my shadow self looks like, and I'm hoping that maybe this ritual will help me find out.
Greetings, UU Fellowship of Redwood City, and everyone watching at home. I am Jarys Maragopoulos. You may recognize me from my stint as a congregant for a few months, almost a year before the pandemic struck. It was not long after that my path to find religious community in which I could practice magic with other occultists led me to join with friends to found a small, majoritively queer First Church of the Morning Star in San Francisco. Much like the UU, we do not require or offer a single dogma for congregants, but welcome practitioners of many paths who can instead agree on an ethos of altruism, solidarity, consent, and liberation. We also practice direct democracy, which is how I was elected to the role of volunteer head pastor, after the first move to found a new chapter on the East Coast last year. I will also be joined in a few minutes by my fellow pastor, Annika. Much of the ritual and occult exploration we practice at Morning Star are various forms of shadow work, one of the reasons by which we describe ourselves as left-hand path. Shadow work, in the Jungian sense, refers to engagement with those parts of the self of which we have come to be afraid, ignorant, or ashamed, so that in self-acceptance, we might experience greater self-love. It is our desire that the Mass of the Seven, it was out of this desire that the Mass of the Seven was created. For you see, I was identified as intersex at birth, meaning to have ambiguous or conflicting indicators of sex. In my particular case, I am insensitive to the androgen my body produces, and without intervention would have developed effeminate in form. But it is not the standard protocol in our society for such children to be left alone. As a child is required to have a male or female sex designation on their birth certificate, so they might fit into a binary society. And so, in accordance with the procedures of Dr. Moni, I endured non-consensual gender assignment surgeries as an infant and child that left my body scarred and my mind disturbed still today. I would never wish this experience on anyone, nor do I have time here to fully describe why it was so objectionable to have such a defining aspect of my identity and relationship with my body so painfully enforced. However, there was legislation to regulate these procedures in the California state legislature to raise the allowed age of the child to 6, such that a gender identity might have formed and the child would be better able to give some measure of consent. I say was, unfortunately, because this legislation died in committee last year for lack of votes and the pressure of lobbying by the California Medical Association. The emotion I felt when I learned of this was, with not a single ounce of shame, anger. I was and am angry at a society that continues to hurt children, to hold them as less important than an ideal to which those children must conform. And because I believe anger, at its core, the inability to abide by what is in knowledge of what could be, to be the seed of all change. I chose to create this ritual as a means to transmute my anger at a world that does not accept me into the self-love of providing that acceptance for myself. I first encountered the entities known as the Seven while researching the Zisaru casting, the Mesopotamian magic circle that precedes the Mass. The Seven were described as an anonymous group of spirits ambiguously demons or gods, while also being unambiguously neither male nor female, as deities who were worshipped within the Sumerian theology that I enjoy reconstructing into my pagan occult practice. The seven's androgyny appealed to me, while their anonymity made it quite difficult to research them. And yet, I was drawn ever closer to them by happenstance when friends suggested I listen to the occult music of the 1969 proto-folk metal band Coven. Their song, The Coven at Charing Cross, quoted liberally from an ancient tablet whose lines described the seven exactly. Researching this song led me to a historical study on the Mesopotamian documents which mentioned the seven, charting their development from titanic forces of primal chaos threatening the Sumerian pantheon to their worship as eventual celebrated members of that pantheon in later Sumerian history, where they were called the Aminbi, to Akkad in Babylon, where they were called the Sebetu. The study serves as the source of most of the material of the Mass of the Seven, and this occult knowledge from ages past came to me at exactly the right time. I am drawn to divinities like the seven because they speak to my intersex and non-binary experience. I connect especially with the fearful response to their ambiguity that caused the gods of Sumer to fear the seven's coming in the oldest myth that features them. I believe it was this fearful response to ambiguity that motivates society to so surgically police the gender binary upon intersex people such as myself. People say that the best vengeance is to live well, but in the case of oppression, I quite disagree. The vengeance spoken of in the Mass of the Seven is nothing less than the dismantling of the very systems that oppress us in the first place, by starting with the shame that the hierarchy, the system of oppression that harms all people, leaves in those that feel its crushing weight. Revenge against the exacting judgments of normalcy starts with allowing your weirdness to shine forth. Thank you, John. But it is not satisfied until no more are allowed to suffer as you have suffered. The seven outlasted the pantheon that once brought them to heel, but just as queer people must outlast the heteronormativity that confines them. The seven are not simply emblems of queerness, however, but chaos incarnate in anthropomorphic forms. Always tied to natural descriptions, they have neither family nor identifying contacts. In their wake, upheaval spreads, and they are specifically antithetical to those with power. The seven may have formed in the Mesopotamian mind as the embodied fears of the migrant, the sexual minority, the unallied, and especially of change. The seven are symbolic of all embodiments of liminality, inherent to all people who stand astride experiences society would prefer to keep separate. But the story of the seven suggests a healthier and more inclusive possibility. When the threat of the seven are subdued, they are not defeated, but brought into the community, where they are seen as a member and as a strength. It is this exact process of reconciliation that makes the seven such profound symbols of shadow work to me, especially that which I have been called to perform in myself as an intersex and transgender person. I believe that this shadow work to be the benefit of many different kinds of people. Those who are not queer but who have seen the music video Montero might have an idea of how radical self-confrontation and acceptance might be fulfilling. In the genesis of this video, Lil Nas X kisses a version of himself as a snake in a fantastic garden, then stones his condemned self as shackled statuesque men. Upon death rides a stripper pole into hell that he was promised as a gay man, then seduces and murders the devil wearing his own face, usurping the power of the latter and achieving a demonic and divine unity. All this occurs over lyrics criticizing a lover who will not admit his own queerness, enticing that lover instead to call me by your name if they are to be joined again. This psychodrama describes Jungian shadow work with a masterful literacy of occult symbolism, and the above phrase is used in the Mass of the Seven to embrace the parts of ourselves that the seven evoke. You, too, can engage in this psychodrama through the Mass of the Seven. After I say, the seven of them are messengers of divinity, I will make motions meant to symbolize the reconciliation of the parts of the self. Any observers are welcome to make motions, meditate, or speak words that signify similar sentiments of the self's dignified wholeness. It is this identification with the divine, or the demonic, that characterizes the Morning Star's congregation ideal of liberation, for we see the divine in diverse phenomena, but none so profoundly as in ourselves. The phrase, "Thou art God, and there is nothing within me that is not divine," appears in many occult rites and practices, and it features in our rites as means of affirming that all people are expressions of divinity, not least those most rejected by society. It should not surprise you to find that this Mass ends with such a bold declaration, which I invite you to intone with heartfelt intent. My liberation implies your liberation, after all. I don't think either of us will be free until we as a society treat people individually as more important than ideas. Such an ideal would be best served by dismantling the systems of oppression that direct authority upward and derision downward. We will start here in our own hearts by embracing our inner turmoil, loving ourselves, and accepting our shadow. With that goal in mind, let us begin by casting the Zisaru circle.
Would you hold this in?
Of course, Pastor. Ready? En sagba, gishara, nubale, mamit mamut, usurtu, shala eteki, gishar, dingir re ene genubale, usurat, ilani, shala, nabal kuti, gishar, ana, kia, nukulruda, usurat, shaene, uir stimtim, shala, utakaru, dingir ian nubale, elu ishta'a nula mushpilu, dingir mulu bage, namu unda anbura, elu u amelu la ip pa'ash sharu. We enchant, ban barrier that none can pass, barrier of the divine that none may break, barrier of heaven and earth that none can change, which no God may annul, nor God nor person can loose. enuru, iminamesh, idim apsu, iminamesh, she'erkaan, dugani iminamesh, idim apsuta, agrunta eamesh, umunus numesh, unira numesh, enenene bubumesh, damnu tukumesh, dumunu tu udamesh, nigshu kida nu unzumesh, azazu siskira gish, nu untukumesh, dumu dilimesh, dumu sagdilimesh, anshi kurasag te eamesh, guzala dingir eanemesh, lulu asila amir sumesh, esira nigiramesh, imin namesh, imin kam, imin arimesh. We enchant, they are the seven they are. Along the edges of the Apsu, the seven they are. Enki, seven adornments they are. Rising from the sanctuary at the source of the Apsu they are. Neither male nor female they are. Chaotic in movement they are. Without spouses known or children begot they are. Acting without order or orders they are. Hearing no pleas, giving no quarter they are. All equal and sharing solidarity they are. Horses charging down from the mountains they are. Agents of hell and of heaven they are. Taking to the streets, stirring up a storm they are. Reforming the very path that they tread they are. They are seven of seven, 7 times 7 they are. Hail to thee, 7 demonic gods. Hail to thee, Aminbi of Sumer. Hail to thee, Sabetu of Akkad. Hail to thee, Pleiades of heaven, born in hell. Conduct once more as you did long ago through the edges of the Apsu, and join with us here in this place and for this time. Demons without maleness or femaleness call to the queer secrets of our hearts, that we may join in victorious revelry over shame and normativity. War gods who have tasted vengeance against masters, receive our chaotic cacophony, the blessings of our divergent vitalities upon a world numbed by hierarchy. Bless us in turn, compassionate Aminbi, with nurtured pride and well-wrought wrath, so that we may be unquestionably ourselves, joyfully engaged in the amalgamated stories of ourselves. Introduce us, heroic Sabetu, to our shadows, and call us by your name, so that we might alchemically conjoin our contradictions in the Athanor of self-love. In the glorious aura of your protean forms, we call to each other. Among the 7 of them,
The first, the furious south wind is she.
call me by your name.
The second is a gape-mouthed dragon, toward whom no one dares advance.
Call me by your name.
The third one is a furious young lion found by the workers.
Call me by your name.
The fourth one, a frightening serpent is he.
Call me by your name.
The fifth one is a lion rampant, which no one can turn back.
Call me by your name.
The sixth one is a wave, rising against God and King.
Call me by your name.
The seventh one is a storm, a destructive wind, wreaking vengeance.
Call me by your name. The 7 of them are messengers of divinity. Vid Elian, Vid Elvidian, El Yan, yan, vid, el, yan, vid, yan, vid, el, yan, 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 yan. Let us pray. To whom do we pray? We pray unto ourselves.
That which is baneful within me to the status quo.
I honor you.
That which is liminal within me and consumes the pure.
I honor you.
That which is new within me, threatening to tradition.
I honor you.
That which is subtly dissident within me.
I honor you.
That which is flamboyantly different within me.
I honor you.
That which from within me tolls the end of tyrants.
I honor you.
That which was shamed within me and will have vengeance.
I honor you. There is nothing within me that is not divine. Be it so.
Be it so.
Thank you. We'll now have a moment of silence. And thank you.